Disclaimer: the following program is designed to offend, provoke, and challenge your religious sensibilities. It contains content that will likely offend anyone who holds religion sacred. This is for those with thick skin or a taste for the harsh truth. If you're easily offended or cherish your religious views, please turn off now. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You have been warned. Welcome to Troll the Verse, where we break down the Bible one chapter at a time because, hey, I guess nobody actually proofreads this thing. Today we're tackling Genesis 18, where Yahweh himself drops by Abraham's tent for dinner, casually eats an unkosher meal, and then announces he's about to nuke an entire city like it's just another Tuesday. And if you're new here, we've got full playlists covering Matthew, Revelation, Genesis, and now, for a special treat, the Book of Mormon, starting at chapter 1, because why stop at exposing just one holy book? So go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, or don't. Honestly, watching this is probably a straight ticket to eternal damnation anyway, so might as well lean into it. All right, let's get right into Genesis 18, where Yahweh shows up, eats some veal, and then threatens genocide. Genesis 18 starts off with Jehovah himself showing up among the oaks of Mamre, because I guess he's making house calls now. And if you hear me switching between Jehovah and Yahweh, don't worry, same dude. Bible names just like to keep things unnecessarily complicated. Anyway, the oaks of Mamre weren't just some random forest. This was Abraham's go-to spot, first mentioned back in Genesis 13 when he pitched his tent there and decided to stick around. Basically his home base. Mamre, in case you're wondering, was actually a person, an Amorite chieftain who teamed up with Abraham in Genesis 14. The place is probably named after him. Not that any of that matters right now, because today it's just Yahweh's chosen picnic spot. Abraham is sitting in his tent during the heat of the day, scorching hot, probably siesta time. Then 3 men appear, standing nearby. Not walking up, not approaching, just suddenly there. No introduction, no warning, just 3 figures materialize. Abraham, instead of questioning how they suddenly showed up, sprints toward them and bows to the ground. Abraham addresses one of them as "my Lord," Adonai in Hebrew. The text makes it clear these are 3 individuals. However, only one of them is Yahweh himself and the other 2 are angels, something Genesis 19:1 confirms when they arrive at Sodom in the next chapter. Some scholars suggest this section might be a repurposed folktale about divine visitors in disguise. Similar hospitality myths show up across ancient cultures. This entire scene could be a Canaanite or Mesopotamian story, with Yahweh inserted as the main god. Abraham, eager to be the perfect host, downplays his offer initially, saying, "Let me grab you a little water and a morsel of bread." Then he goes full feast mode. He rushes to Sarah, demanding she make cakes. He runs to the herd, personally picks out a young calf, has a servant prepare it, and brings out butter, milk, and meat. This turns from a small snack into a feast fit for royalty. Then they eat. Yahweh, who, according to theology, doesn't need food, just stands there under a tree chowing down on dairy and veal. But later in Leviticus 11, Yahweh is going to establish strict food laws, including the prohibition against mixing dairy and meat. Yet here he is guzzling down a fully unkosher meal. Guess the Almighty wasn't worried about dietary rules yet. And really, who needs consistency? Consistency is not a thing in the Bible. Yahweh and his 2 companions finish their veal dinner and immediately shift gears to baby announcements. Instead of just declaring it from the sky or sending an angel in a dream like he does elsewhere, he personally shows up for this one. No explanation, just a house call as though it's completely normal. Sarah doesn't just doubt herself, she amusingly doubts Abraham too. When she laughs, she says, "My Lord also is old." It appears as though she's not so sure Abraham is up for the job. Yahweh says she'll have a son, and Sarah immediately questions the mechanics, which makes no sense, so she laughs in her heart, not out loud. Then Yahweh, who supposedly knows everything, asks Abraham why Sarah laughed. Not Sarah, Abraham, almost like she isn't allowed in the conversation. When she gets called out, she panics and denies it. Yahweh shuts her down with, "Nay, but thou didst laugh." The Almighty, creator of the universe, ends this exchange by correcting a woman about whether or not she giggled. But why did Yahweh need to be here for this? Why show up in person? If this were any other biblical pregnancy prophecy, Yahweh would have just sent an angel. He doesn't show up personally for Samson's birth, John the Baptist's birth, or even Jesus's birth. So why is this one different? Sarah was in the tent preparing their food. She hears the prophecy immediately after they eat. Suddenly, she's set to conceive. Maybe someone slipped something into her dinner. The text never elaborates, and we're just expected not to ask. We're not even the first to notice this. Ancient Sumerians told plenty of stories about gods coming down, eating food, and helping with fertility. So maybe this entire scene is just another Mesopotamian myth with a different name. Ancient Mesopotamian myths were already telling stories about barren women miraculously conceiving long before Genesis 18. The Sumerian myth of Enlil and Ninlil features a goddess struggling with infertility before divine intervention allows her to bear Nena, the moon god. The Ugaritic texts describe the god El blessing a barren woman so she can conceive a powerful son, eerily similar to Sarah's story. There are actually a few more that could even be considered just to show how prevalent this was. In the Akkadian legend of Sargon, his mother, a high priestess who wasn't supposed to conceive, miraculously gives birth to a destined ruler. Even the Nippur lamentation uses the metaphor of a barren land suddenly becoming fertile, much like Sarah's unexpected pregnancy. These stories all follow the same pattern, some kind of divine involvement, a previously barren woman, and a child of destiny. Genesis 18 isn't unique, it's just another version of an older fertility myth, with Yahweh swapped in for Enlil or El. And these aren't obscure references, you can easily find them with a quick Google search. So anyway, Sarah laughs, Yahweh gets offended, then he leaves, mission accomplished. Now let's talk about who these three men are. There seems to be a lot of confusion from everyone on this. So to be clear, two of the men will head towards Sodom in Genesis 19. One where they're explicitly called angels. The third one stays behind and talks with Abraham and is repeatedly identified as Yahweh. It's a straightforward setup. One of the men is Yahweh himself, physically eating and chatting with Abraham. The other two are angels, disguised as men, who leave for Sodom in the next chapter. All three are called men, with no explanation of why Yahweh decided to appear in human form. The text jumps between singular and plural. Abraham calls them my Lord, which is singular, but also uses plural phrasing like your feet, and support ye your heart. Then later, Jehovah speaks alone while the other two leave for Sodom. If this is supposed to be strict monotheism, it's doing a terrible job at it. Early Christian apologists like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus try to force the Trinity interpretation here, but it falls apart because 2/3 of God can't just walk off to Sodom while the other third chats with Abraham. It also contradicts later claims that no one can see God and live. Consistency isn't exactly Genesis' strong suit. After finishing the miracle baby prophecy, Yahweh and his two companions rise and look towards Sodom, but they don't leave just yet. Abraham's still with them, sending them off, meaning they're all standing together. And that's when Yahweh suddenly starts talking out loud, as if deciding whether or not to tell Abraham what's about to happen. Am I concealing from Abraham that which I am doing? So who exactly is he asking this question to? The text says the men are still there, meaning he's saying this in front of Abraham and the angels. So he's not alone. This is a council-style decision. Instead of just making a decision, Yahweh starts listing reasons why Abraham should know what's coming. Abraham certainly becometh a nation great and mighty. Blessed in him have been all nations of the earth. I have known him, that he commandeth his children, and they have kept the way of Jehovah. It really does read like Yahweh is making a case for Abraham, as if the angels need convincing. If they're divine messengers, shouldn't they already be on board with whatever Yahweh says? Why does he feel the need to justify Abraham's importance? It's almost like he's lobbying for Abraham's reputation, reassuring them that he's worthy of this inside information. Or worse, maybe this is some leftover trace of an older polytheistic tradition where the chief god still has to persuade his divine council before making big decisions. Then, without any transition, Yahweh jumps from talking about Abraham to talking about Sodom's wickedness. It's as if he needs to contrast Abraham's supposed righteousness before moving forward with the destruction. But if Yahweh is omniscient, why the extra commentary? Why not just tell Abraham outright? The whole passage makes him sound less like an all-knowing God and more like a leader trying to justify his next move to his subordinates. Then Yahweh suddenly declares, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah, because great and their sin, because exceeding grievous, I go down now and see whether according to its cry which is coming unto me they have done completely, and if not, I know. So now God has to investigate. Didn't he already say their sin was very grievous? Why does he need a second opinion? The cry of Sodom and Gomorrah hath been great. Who's crying out? Is there some kind of complaint system in place we haven't been told about? Who is complaining? I go down now and see whether so he doesn't already know, and if not, I know. Why is there an if at all? Isn't he supposed to be omniscient? And for all you believers having a fit in the comments right now, this is why you should read your Bible critically. You absolutely should, because you've got the brain of a vegetable. Sit down and really look at the stuff you think you believe. This completely undermines the idea of an all-knowing God. The text makes Yahweh sound like a human ruler sending spies to confirm intelligence before making a decision. The whole structure matches older polytheistic myths where gods had to gather information before acting. Everything about this passage mirrors divine council myths from Mesopotamian and Canaanite traditions. In the Atrahasis epic, Enlil needs a council of gods to approve wiping out humans. In Ugaritic texts, divine assemblies debate before enacting judgment. In Canaanite mythology, El makes decisions with other deities instead of acting alone. Genesis 18 plays out exactly like these earlier myths. Instead of being a singular all-knowing deity, Yahweh is portrayed as a ruler among other divine beings debating a course of action. Even worse, his decision-making process looks weak. He doesn't just know Sodom's sins, he has to go check. He doesn't immediately tell Abraham his plan, he debates it first. He gives a long, redundant speech about Abraham's importance to his own supposed angels. If this is supposed to be monotheism, it certainly doesn't look like it here. Yahweh comes across as just another bureaucratic deity in a pantheon, still needing to gather intelligence before making a move. And before anyone rushes to the comment section with, well, my translation doesn't say that, or that's not what my evangelical study Bible says. Yeah, no kidding. That's because your book has been altered by the doctrine of your church. Go look it up. Biblical translations aren't neutral. They're filtered through theology. So don't bring that crap into my comments. Mine is a straight translation, no theological edits. Verse 22, the angels finally depart. It says, the men, as in two, go towards Sodom, and Abraham is left with Yahweh. Instead of just accepting the inevitable, Abraham tries to negotiate. Realizing what's coming, he questions God's justice. Are you seriously going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? Which is pretty bold of him, considering the last time humans questioned Yahweh, he drowned the whole planet. But Abraham isn't smited on the spot. He bargains like he's buying a goat, talking Yahweh down from 50 righteous people to 10. Yahweh agrees each time, then walks off with no final explanation. What about the babies, the kids, the animals? Sodom was a large city. There were children, infants, animals, none of whom are ever mentioned in the bargaining. Abraham only tries to spare righteous adults. Yahweh never brings up children. No mention of animals. So when people claim God only punished the wicked, that's not accurate. The entire city goes down, which includes everyone and everything in it. Yahweh says he won't destroy the city if 10 righteous people are found. There's no chance a large city didn't have at least 10 innocents, especially children who can't be wicked yet. Lot's family alone should count for something. Yet Sodom still gets obliterated. Maybe Yahweh never intended to spare it, making the negotiation a sham, or righteous magically doesn't apply to children or innocent people. Either way, his words mean nothing. This debate literally changes nothing. Abraham doesn't win, Sodom still burns. So much for mercy. Yahweh was always going to burn it down. The only result is Abraham wasting his breath, and not a single mention of kids, infants, or animals. So that's Genesis 18, likely just another reworked Mesopotamian story featuring a weird dinner scene, a deity who can't decide whether he's alone or with a crew, and a pointless bargaining session that does nothing except expose how Yahweh's so-called mercy is completely arbitrary. He shows up in human form to eat a non-kosher meal, awkwardly argues with Sarah over whether she laughed, debates with his own angels, and then pretends like he's open to negotiation before nuking Sodom anyway. If this was supposed to be a demonstration of wisdom, it's not exactly impressive. Thanks for watching Troll the Verse. If you enjoyed this breakdown of biblical nonsense, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't, because I hear questioning Yahweh's logic as a straight ticket to the fiery pits of hell. Either way, I couldn't care less, or believe it less. I'll be here breaking down more scripture because someone has to.